because it's 8:24, so everybody can come on in. Yeah, I know. Apartment living. It's what
Love it.
I would love to get there.
Yeah, and I love this apartment above PJ's Pancake House was literally like they felt bad because when they close up the restaurant for the night, the cooks and everybody puts on music so we could hear the music, but I don't care, right? It was fine with
They're,
me.
yeah, and they're not closing up at 2 in the morning.
Well, they
That's
were.
wasn't it PJ's open that late?
It used to be, yeah. And that's when like the music would come on like between midnight and 2 and 3, and they had to clean, and so I
Wow.
was fine with it. But then they would feel bad, and so they'd be like, "Oh, anytime you want pancakes or lunch or dinner, just come on down."
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Okay, you're just selling me on that. I'd
it
be
was
down for
perfect,
breakfast.
right? So welcome, Amanda and Beth and Lisa and Michelle. Yeah, it is a rainy morning.
It is. It is. It's going to be one of those days. If everybody can stay in your PJs. I don't know though. Aisha's at her office, so I assume she's dressed because she must have left.
Yes, unfortunately.
She must have left her home.
Oh my God, Lisa, you walked in the dark and the rain outdoors?
Oh,
Oh, good for you.
oh, God bless you, woman. I'm not leaving my house. I got my PJ bottoms on.
Oh, I like it.
They have
So,
polar bears on them.
Lisa, tell everybody before we get started about your son and is
So
he
I'm like
home?
so excited. My son is home from the Navy. I have not seen him in 18 months. And it stinks when your kids are in the military. It's awesome. It's very proud, but it's a huge sacrifice for the family because you don't get to see them that much. So I get him till the end of November, and then he goes to Japan for 3 years. So I'm soaking up every minute. I made him come over and meet Aisha.
And he's getting married in a couple weeks.
And he's getting married. So, when he goes to Japan, they'll probably have kids. By the time he comes back, he'll be husband and dad. And so I'll be missing all that. But anyway, so I'm just very excited. And my everybody on my team is incredibly supportive. They're like, go, just go. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the next 2 weeks. Although I'll still be here. I'll still be seeing you every Thursday morning. So
That's perfect.
we should be good, except for we won't be here on Thanksgiving morning. Just saying. Although, you know what? We could probably have a really quiet one on Thanksgiving morning. I'll bring my Bloody Mary because
Oh,
we drink Bloody Marys on Thanksgiving morning. It's a
oh,
tradition.
I can get with that.
Can you get
That'll
with
be
that?
fine.
We'll have our talk on Thursday morning, on Thanksgiving morning. We'll see. We'll have to talk about that one.
We'll work that out, right? So let's get going.
And the wedding is November 14th.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, there's, some people aren't coming, and I'm totally comfortable with that, and I get it because, but we're doing everything we can. So anyway, good morning, everybody. Empowering women entrepreneurs. So we are here with the fabulous Aisha Hamilton, who just had a birthday.
Oh, thank you.
She turned 29 again. She looks good, doesn't she?
Yeah, I'm good with 48. I like it.
Well, you look fabulous. You haven't
Thank
aged a
you.
day. She is the owner at Hamilton Law, and her practice focuses on employment law, taking good care of employees. My name is Elisa McCabe. I'm the owner at First Steps Financial, and we help small businesses stay organized and simplify their processes so that they can see what their financials are and make good, solid decisions. All information and content on this webinar is for general purposes only. And today we are talking about keeping control over client contact, to do or not to do. How do you know that your employees are providing great client care? And how do you make sure that your employees don't leave with your clients and start their own business? And this subject is kind of interesting. I think there's so many different ways that we can talk about this. So,
So you dive in. Tell me what you do because you bring in, you're the rainmaker, you bring in the client, and then your team really has a bulk of the contact with the clients. How do you make sure that the contact is reflective of who you are and who First Steps Financial is?
Yeah. So we we do a lot of training on client care, and we also do a lot of training about our vision and mission and all those things, so that people understand the way that we are. And it actually helps that I'm the filter for clients coming in, because if we don't have growth minded entrepreneurs, they don't get past me. So for the most part, they're a certain type of employee, and I think that they're a certain type of client, but also we also have a certain type of employee, because we still handpick employees. So what, we do what we can, but I do have to say, did have a client come to me and say, like, hey, I would like to hire your employee.
Ooh.
And to be honest, I was very it was a very polite thing to do. It was actually extremely respectful to do,
Right.
because honestly, in this day and age, he didn't have to.
Right.
They could have totally done it on their own, and I was completely comfortable with it. I really was. I actually, first of all, what would you do in this situation? Like, what are you gonna do? Fight them about it?
Right. So I will have clients call me, some of the businesses I represent. And it really depends on the business, right? So I represent a couple of, we're going to call them software developer middlemen. So they bring people over from India, or they hire people here to staff contracts with large corporations on their internal IT departments. Um,
Hmm.
and so those types of employees actually have non-competes built into their contractual arrangements. And the
Right.
middleman also has a non-compete built in with the client that they're staffing, right?
Right.
So staffing companies, you've got to be careful there, because you don't want to be violating non-competes. But my guess is, in your situation, you don't have a non-compete that prevents the employee from going somewhere.
Oh, we
Um,
do. We
oh,
do
you
have a non-compete.
do.
Yeah, we have everybody sign a non-compete,
Oh, so
because
that's good.
yeah, but
And part of it, though, is you can have the non-compete in place,
mhm,
but are you really going to enforce it? And that's the other part of the conversation, that, talking very generally, not about your company and your philosophy, but many small companies will look at it and go, is this a fight I'm going to pick? Fine, go, but you're dead to me. you know?
yeah.
Um,
Yep. And so I actually chose in that situation. I still have a really positive relationship with both of them.
right.
He's someone, the client, I love him. He is nice, wonderful man, does really good work. Um, but it was actually the right thing. It was
Right.
very interesting. It wasn't something that I, would have constructed, but it was really good that this employee left and that he left too. It actually worked.
And
And
actually, because you made it a seamless transition, because you didn't have a fight about it, because everybody was respectful and kind to each other, he's still a potential good referral source,
he is,
right?
that's true. That's
Because
good.
he's walking away. Is the right thing to do was to reach out to you, but also recognizing that he kind of took your employee when he shouldn't have. So maybe, I'm all about using the guilt, right? So if his sort of guilt is, oh, but Elisa was so kind and so professional about this whole thing. She's your person if you can't afford to have the person in-house. Uh,
Yeah.
and just to sort of add to this, maybe Denise and Beth and Amanda, and Jason, on our lawyers on the call today. I will hire paralegals. I limit their contact with my client to, say, email and get discovery documents, things like that. I actually never let my bookkeeper have direct contact with clients, because if there's going to be a money discussion, I'm going to have it with them. And I want to make sure that I'm setting the tone for the discussion, not
Mm.
somebody calling up and say, we're going to come out and break your knees if you don't. But this exact issue, right, about not just client interaction, but taking your clients, stealing your clients,
Yeah.
is
That's
why, even though right now I really need to hire a lawyer, but I have not. And
mm,
that's my concern. You cannot ask lawyers to sign non-competes. They're not enforceable. And
really.
so, yeah, and you cannot preclude a client from saying, well, I want to go with this guy, right?
Mm,
He's been the one working on my case the whole time. I want continuity, so I'm going to go with him,
right.
or her. And so that really, like, I haven't been able to wrap my head around, how do I reconcile with, I need a lawyer on board to do some attorney work, but the risk is, and the risk is actually greater with smaller firms,
Yeah.
that this lawyer is going to leave and take that piece of business. And a lot of people look at the situation and go, well, if she can do this, I can do it too. I'm going to set up my own shop.
I know. That actually, that mindset cracks me up just a little bit, because I'm thinking, you have no idea.
Right.
I think people, and I sometimes feel like sometimes people look at, when someone's a business owner, they go, oh, they have the life.
Right.
And I'm thinking, you have no idea. I do often, my husband owns his own business. He's an electrical contractor, and he has this great group of guys that work with him. And sometimes I think, because we try to go on vacation, we used to travel, back in the good old days. And I think they used to, think, oh, he's not doing anything. And so I would tell them, like, yeah, Joe worked till 11 o'clock last night. And I say he works till 11 o'clock almost every night.
Right.
Comes home from work, works a whole day, comes home, eats dinner, and then goes in the office and works for 5 hours.
Right.
So that's not a life that's super easy.
Right.
And apparently you're impressing Irene. Irene is in Maryland, I think.
Oh, okay.
So if
Yeah, she asked, am I licensed in New Jersey? And I'm licensed, and I will say this, and the other attorneys on the call will laugh. I'm licensed in New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. I'm not sure there's any amount of money you could pay me to practice in New York.
oh,
Been there, done that. It's just a nightmare. And so I will practice in the federal courts in New York, but not in the state court. If you,
not not enough money involved for that.
yeah, no, it's just insane. So maybe you have some suggestions. Maybe people on the call have some suggestions about how I can overcome my control freak status. But
Well, I don't think it's control freak. I think, look, you've built something and this is your baby. And I feel that way about my Beth says nope. I do. This is your baby. This is like, you don't want anybody to take it. It's something that you've created and you've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it.
right.
And I agree.
Can you imagine what I'm going to be like when my kids get married or leave for college or start dating someone? Oh, I'm going to be that mom.
You're going to be investigating them.
That's right.
I do have a client who, the way that they started their business, and it was a woman-owned business, is she left a firm and she took all the clients.
Right.
And the previous boss was left with nothing.
Yeah.
Like zero. She took everything. And I thought, ooh, and they had a non-compete and it didn't, they went to court and it didn't stand up.
Right.
That's like the other thing. Like, I can understand why you're worried, because you feel like if you have a non-compete, like, can it stand up?
Yeah.
I mean,
And
no.
the question, right, is, first, is it enforceable, right?
Yeah.
Second of all, that's an incredibly expensive process.
Mm-hmm.
About enforcing a non-compete. Like, courts don't like non-competes because
Yeah.
it's restraining the ability of someone to do what they do in their career, in their chosen industry. And so the thought process is, before we enforce that kind of agreement, we're really going to make sure that this company is actually going to suffer damages. And all non-competes have a clause in it that says that the employee admits that if the non-compete is breached, that this company will have incurred damages as a direct result of their actions, all of that. But to litigate all of that, just that admission in itself is not enough, right? The fact that you're throwing that language in before any damages have even been incurred. So a company is still going to have to say, now in the case of you stealing my clients, it's easy to prove because I lost revenue.
Right.
But I've dealt with non-competes where somebody goes from Verizon to Comcast in the same situation, right? Same position, right? There was a VP of marketing type of role. And you've got, you know, now you've got Verizon saying, well, you have a non-compete. And Comcast is saying, well, we've reviewed the non-compete and we feel comfortable hiring this lawyer. And then the first thing Verizon will do, and this is a hypothetical example, right? It's
Oh
not
my
okay.
God.
The first thing that the competitor or the person with the non-compete does is send a cease and desist letter. And what that does then is it says to Comcast and the employee, get ready because we're going to enforce this non-compete, whether it's enforceable or not. So at that point, the Comcast type of company is going to turn around and say, well, we're not really sure we want to get into this fight, right? Or do we want you bad enough that we're going to get into this fight? And I will tell you, in this day and age, I'm not sure that companies will want to do that fight.
Yeah, there's lots of employees out there, and I think there's really good talent out there.
Right.
So I want to go back to this issue about you not being able to hire somebody, because I think that's terrible. I really do. And I think, I mean, could you set it up in a way that, you know, where all these clients are yours and everything that comes in, make them bring in a certain portion, and then
You could, and I wouldn't have any problem with somebody saying, well, I brought that person in, that's my
right.
sister-in-law, whatever. I'm taking those. Of course, those are
Yeah,
your
I
clients,
do
right?
that all the
I
time.
didn't generate that business, that's fine. But that's not the issue I have. The
Mhm.
issue is I generated that business. That's my contact from 15 years of marketing in this firm and from developing relationships in the communities in which I live and all of the freaking volunteer work I do. And
Yeah.
you're going to take that client from me? I don't think so.
I mean,
So,
how do companies go from your size? I mean, there's tons of big firms out there.
right.
How do they make that next step? Like, how
they,
do they?
they don't have all the paranoia I have. They're willing, you know, Beth has attorneys that work for her. Amanda certainly works for a larger firm. They hire attorneys, right? With the understanding that
They
you
leave at some
potentially
point.
may lose. I mean, large firms have been brought to their knees by losing an entire department,
Yeah.
right? So all of the lawyers in the you know, commercial real estate department sit down and talk and say, well, we don't like the stuff that this firm is doing, so we have enough money, they take everybody down to like the
Oh,
paralegals and the secretary. I mean, they just take the whole department. And if that
wow.
was a huge revenue source for the firm, that's going to be a problem, right? And you have no way of restraining that because the client is choosing to go with that practice.
So, okay. So I think regardless of the law, it really comes down to what the culture is that you have. I do, because I don't think people leave. I, I don't know. I don't think people leave a company. You usually leave a boss or you leave
That's
a
right.
toxic situation. So what would make you want to leave? I mean, occasionally you would have somebody who says, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I get that. There are some people who decide I want to be an entrepreneur. But I think those are few and far between. People don't usually go to work for somebody else because they want to be an entrepreneur,
No,
you
and
know?
I think a lot of it is you hit the nail right on the head, right? So for all of the larger firms where entire departments left, if you talk to anybody in that department that then went off and started their own practice, it was because they saw firm mismanagement.
Yeah.
And they saw the writing on the wall. The ship is going down. And so this was the way to sort of preserve this client base and not find themselves laid off and out of jobs because the firm couldn't financially manage itself. One
Right.
thing that lawyers like to think we know how to do, but I don't think you really are ever given any training on this, is run a business, right?
I totally agree. My daughter's in law school right now, and I'm like, you need to take, there should be a class. Do you want me to come in and teach it? She's like, no.
Yeah, there's no, and Denise says none, no
None. Yeah.
training whatsoever. There's no training on business development, right?
Yeah.
So
How to talk
any
to people. Yeah.
exactly, like that's exactly right. You know, that they'll never deign to do training on your 30-second commercial or your, how you walk into a room and walk up to a group of people that you don't know and start a conversation, right?
Oh my
But
God.
at the same time, your involvement and your success in a law firm and in any company is driven by business development, right? Is what is your value before a law firm, at least this is the way I would look at it, is before I'm willing to share my pie with you, I want to know what you added to the pie.
Yeah. No, exactly. Michelle put in, not feeling valued or appreciated and no opportunity for growth is something that
Absolutely.
when people don't have that, that's when you want to go.
Right.
Um, that's a really good point that they should bring something, what are you bringing to the table? So in our company, we actually do, before we hire somebody, we have them do a personality test. We do the DISC profile test, and we've talked about these. And I think I actually do hire mostly employee-minded people
Right.
because that's what I need to do the work. But
Right.
again, that leaves me with, there's this level of people that I need that need to be able to talk to entrepreneurs about being an entrepreneur.
Right.
And it's been brought up to me from my team. They're like, but you're the only one who can do that because you have that mindset. So that would worry me to hire somebody who has my kind of mindset, because then they could come in and take over and develop the relationship with the clients.
So in the context of a law firm, right? And it's so funny that you raised that issue, because I think some of the frustration that younger associates feel is that the senior partners hold their client contacts very close. And so you're not allowed to get on a call with a client unless the senior partner is on, because he's the relationship manager, right?
Yeah.
And then that is the frustration that builds to then create other opportunities for these lawyers to say, okay, well, I'm leaving, right? If you're guarding this client so closely as your client, then what possible growth do I have in this setting? So some law firms look at clients once brought in are now firm clients. They don't belong to any one single partner. That works in a larger firm because you're still recognized as the billing partner or the generation partner, right? The lead generator. But in a small firm, all of those clients are my clients.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
when you take my client, you're affecting my profit, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely. And I'm sorry, there's a whole part of it that's emotional. It's hurtful.
it's personal.
It's
I think that's
personal.
what it's on there. It's personal.
Yeah. And I totally agree. You know, so when our clients come in, they all meet with me first, and I develop a relationship with them, and then someone works with them on a day-to-day basis, and they develop a really strong relationship with them. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I don't really worry about it too much. I figure if
And my hope is in your business model that the reason that the clients are coming to you in the first place is for 99% of them, they don't want somebody in-house doing this stuff.
yeah, they
That's
don't.
why they're outsourcing to you. And they
Yeah,
don't want to deal with a full-time W-2 employee that now may have, New Jersey sick leave pay due to them. And, all of the other management stuff that comes with having the even one more employee on board, right? So
Right.
that's why they outsource to you. And they like the way you're streamlined and that you're handling all of the issues that they don't like to think about.
Well, you know what too, and this is how we position ourselves, is that when you hire us, you don't hire that just one person, you hire a whole team.
Right.
So maybe, Aisha, if positioned your company in the same way, like even though, you've hired Joe Smith as as another lawyer for you, he does things the Hamilton Law way.
Right.
And it's a team approach. So you might be having a relationship with him, but his level of expertise comes from the group as a whole.
Right. I do think I need to really start paying attention to this stuff and thinking about it,
Yeah.
because it's been a busy year. I know, Amanda and Beth and I were chatting about her firm keeps trying to hire people and they keep saying no. But meanwhile, her work it didn't go away. Right? You should never be at the point where you have to turn away clients because there physically aren't enough hours in the day to actually do the work. And I'm getting to that point. So I'm not, I work every weekend now. It used to
Uh,
be I worked one day a weekend. Now I work both days the weekends. And I think that that's fine because my kids are older and they don't want to have anything to do with me. And
you're
my
teenagers.
husband could use the break. But there comes a point where you just don't even have the hours
Yeah.
anymore. And I don't want to risk burnout. So,
No. And you have to, and that's when you have to decide. I was at that point too. And I hired somebody to come in and help. And, she was with me for like 7 years. So
I love that. I
yeah.
love
I
that.
mean, so something to think about. What if you started small?
Right.
I look. I have a student. I have a daughter in law school. There you go. She can't take any clients.
Right. Yeah. And it's worth, I used to take on like a summer intern
Yeah,
and
that's a
found
lot of
that,
work, though.
nah, and it was a lot of training time. And
Yeah,
it's important that we in the profession do that.
yeah.
It's, but I don't have the time to do it. So
No,
it's,
yeah.
I,
When you're working 7 days a week, it's hard to mentor someone, and even if you were trying to train them in the Hamilton Law way of things,
you still have to train them.
yeah, that's a lot to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
All
So,
right. So in the end, do we even do a non-compete? Like, is it worth it to do one?
right.
I mean, that's the thing.
I think you have to look at it from the context of what's the type of information that they're going to be coming in contact with, and then decide whether this non-compete is even going to be enforceable. So someone who's performing a bookkeeping role knows how to do QuickBooks. You may train them on 3 other programs, right? But that's stuff that's available in the public domain.
Mhm.
Now, if you're Coca-Cola and the person who is signing that non-compete is going to have access to the formula,
Yeah.
or you're Comcast and someone signing that non-compete is, in the CFO role and has business strategies and internal access to sort of pricing models and things like that, then you have to think about, yeah, actually a court would enforce that because that's not information readily available in the public domain.
Mm.
But I've heard about people having pizza store managers sign non-competes. Come on.
They're making special sauce.
The sauce comes in a bag, you open the bag, you put it on the pizza. Like there's no like cooking happening at the local Domino's. But so there's an appropriate sort of scope of jobs that should
Yeah.
have non-competes. Jason adds a great comment that aside from non-competes, you can also use confidentiality agreements. And I think that that's almost a more effective way to get around. It's not a restraint on your ability to work. It's just a restraint on what you're able to talk about. And
Mm.
so that's almost a more reasonable and more enforceable way for a court to wrap their head around. We're not telling you you can't work for Comcast. We're
Mhm.
just telling you that you better not be sharing any of the business practices that you learned here, or
Right.
any of the pricing models.
Actually, that's really good.
So interestingly, I had a client several years ago who was a delivery person. He managed the delivery routes for Pepsi products. And they had a very clear non-compete on that, because if Coke products got a hold of the delivery routes, then they can approach those customers and say, hey, switch over to us. And ultimately, your non-compete is between you and your employee. It is not between you and the customer.
Right.
The
Yeah.
customer may have a contract that says, I'm tied to you for 3 years of delivery of Coke products or Pepsi products. But if there's no such restriction on the customer can stop ordering from you and order from Pepsi, do
Yeah.
whatever they want. So
Mm.
confidentiality agreements might be the better way to go about doing it.
Okay, that's good.
Oh,
We
we're at 55.
oh my God, we gabbed quite a bit this morning. So next time we're going to be back here next Thursday. We're going to talk about the holiday season and how do you handle the pet pressures and stresses at this time of year? And do you feel like you experience holidays than the rest of the people in your life? Does it all fall to you? And have you done anything that helps you to enjoy it more? I think that is going to be really interesting conversation. Amanda had a comment. Do you want to read?
Oh, yeah. She says, so, and I love that they do this, right? When they talk in interviews, they really press in the interview on commitment to full-time family law practice. And I think that's great that you're letting the new associate coming in know, look, this is what it's going to be like. Are you ready for this? Especially if they're a newer attorney. Sometimes newer attorneys don't fully consider the scope of how difficult this job is. So I think that's actually a great way to make sure that they know what they're getting into, which means you put your cards on the table. You said, this is what our firm is like. This is what our culture is like. And I know, Elisa, you do that too, sort of when you're evaluating new employees.
And I'm sure, you know, we try to tell them this is what you can expect. And I don't know if they don't believe us or like, yeah, I mean, and I wonder what Amanda's success is with that too. That's interesting.
And I think it makes sure that you have the right fit, right? It's all about fit.
Absolutely. All right. It was great seeing you as usual. Thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, she says success to be determined when we find the right person. It'll happen.
All right. Bye everybody. Take care. Have a good week.
Bye.